Hello guys, today we have here a nice little Hotel California brought to you by yours truly and of course the Eagles. And today I wanted to talk about the guitar diagrams I use to help me learn how to play that song, right? So you always hear me say you can make like millions of songs with just a couple of chords, right? But what are chords? And why are they so important? Well, let's go ahead and see right here on our next slide here that a guitar diagram is what we need and why we need one. It's a good question. Why do we need one? Because that's how you kind of learn how to do these certain shapes on a guitar, right? I don't want you guys to think about this as music. It's crazy because it's music, but I want you to think about kind of like shapes. Like, look at the shape of this guitar, right? Look at the shape of the circle. It's a circle shape, right? The guitar is kind of a guitar shape. So it's more like geometry here, where we when we look at the guitar chord diagram. It's like math. It's more math than music, actually, guys. So if we go to the next slide here, we'll see why it's more like math than music. And I guess you could say realistically that the tablature is going to be more like math and the chord diagrams is going to be more like geometry. Why am I comparing music to math? It's interesting, right? So there are two main types of diagrams you're going to see when you're wanting to play the guitar, right? We have chord diagrams. So a diagram just means a picture, guys. So remember the shapes we were talking to you about earlier? You see how there's like, kind of like connect the dots? There's going to be a lot of dots later. And tablature is kind of more like math. Like it's going to be with lines and numbers. We'll get into that later. But if we go into the next slide here, I don't know why we keep going back, but my guy's not doing such a good job back there. So they're drawings basically of the guitar neck, right? So we're gonna go ahead and look at the chord diagrams first, right? So I want you guys to take a look at this right here, this part right here, the guitar. This is gonna be where we do most of our open chords, right? So open chords are what we're gonna use to learn to play our first songs, right? So we go on to the next one, and so as I was saying here, the picture of the guitar chord diagram is gonna be just kind of like the top picture, just like the first 3 frets is what you really need. 1, 2, 3. Some guitar chords are going to be all the way up to the 5th fret, and there's going to be all sorts of different types of numberings, but this is going to be the basic one you see here on the bottom position, right? Not the bottom position, sorry, closer to the headstock position. This black line obviously is the nut, right? And you can see the resemblance. So this line is the 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. You see it right there. And of course the number of the strings. We memorize the names of the strings, very important, because we know that whichever strings we have here, that go down right here, it's going to be, E, B, G, D, A, and E. And of course, it's good to memorize it both forward and backwards, right? E strings are always going to be right here. And, your E, B, G, D, A, E, E, A, D, G, B, E. It's really important to know them literally front and backwards, right? So, yeah, right here, as you can see, we have the open position of the C major. Yes. So now we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. Right, no technical difficulties here. Everything's good on my brand new TV. So a chord is more than one note, right? A chord is actually 3 notes, 1, 2, 3, but played together 3 at the same time, right? Make a chord, right? And that's all a chord really is. I'd like to see a saxophone player play 3 notes in the same time, right? And they typically sound like this. Kind of like the beginning song you heard me play earlier, Hotel California, which is a great song, right? Sounds like I did a lot more than 3 notes there, but believe me, what I'm only doing is playing 3 notes. And with 6 strings, I'm basically playing the 3 notes like a couple of times, right? There's 6 strings on a guitar, and I say you only play 3 notes, right? It's because when you put your fingers in the guitar on the chord, you're playing 3 notes And then the other 3 notes are pretty much the same notes as the first 3, except just higher pitch, higher octaves, lower octaves. That's generally true for most guitars, most string instruments like a bass. Not really a bass, more like guitar, right? Ukuleles, everything that you play, even if you're playing a piano, or even if you're playing one of those instruments where you only play 1 note at a time. I know saxophone is one of them. You're still 1, 2, 3 always makes up a chord, right? There's of course other different types of chords, but typically always made out of those major 3, or sorry, those top 3, right? So this is what we're actually talking about. This is what it actually looks like. It's a great picture here, right? Not all of the chords are going to have the number of the frets. You just kind of count them sometimes. But if they have that, that's great. You're going to notice there's an X here. That X means mute, or when you see a 0, open string. Meaning that when you play when you actually play the guitar, when you actually play the chord, sorry. So for example, if we have an X here on the E string, we're not playing that string, but these other 2 strings, when your fingers are not on, there's a 0, which means you can play those strings. So that's going to be the G string, right? E, B, G, G. And an open E. So, but we don't worry about them. We just worry about these ones. That's where we actually really want to worry about, right? If we can't play these 2 notes right here, that's okay. But these are the most important notes, because remember we talked about a chord being 3 notes. And so that's why you're going to get notes, the chords that have 3 fingers on there. Sometimes you're only going to have 2, because one of these open ones is part of the chord notes, the notes of the chord. We'll get into that later. Right now, I want you guys to focus more on, there's always going to be generally around 3 to 2 fingers, always in every chord. Sometimes 4. Sometimes guitar gets crazy like that. Sometimes it's a lot. 4 fingers on a fretboard like that. You're playing something serious there, right? But you have 3 or 2, generally 3. 3 is going to be the magic number, sometimes 2. These ones are really easy chords to play, guys. So we're going to go ahead and explore some more chords, right? So this is kind of like how that, oh, wow. Yeah, and as you can see here we have the caged system. So we're not going to learn about that. But if you want to know, that spells C-A-G-E-D, caged. We're not going to learn that today. That's a lot to learn. I'll be lying to you if I said even I knew how to do that. I don't. But these are the most important shapes. Remember I talked about in the beginning shapes, right? So the chord diagram is going to be the one that looks like a picture, kind of like this. Kind of weird, almost like a piano, but like a weird piano. But it's not a piano, it's a guitar. So we have C major. Remember, guys, that we're going to learn 2 types of chords. They're going to be major or minor. All of these are major because they don't have an M. The next ones, these ones right here, A, D, and E, with the little M. Remember, guys, it has to be a little M. If it's a big M, it might be major, but sometimes they're not. So really, I just want you to, once again, guys, I want you guys to go back to the previous slide before. I want you to look at the shape, you see? So this right here kind of looks like a weird little L right here. Kind of looks like a little car seat. Go to the next one. And we also have the same figure right here, A minor. So I want you guys to think, whenever you guys think about chords, I don't want you to think about them as chords, right? I don't want you to be like, oh, that's A minor. Well, I do. I want that. But what's more important than actually the actual name of them is the shape. You see how this one kind of looks like a weird, I don't know, kind of looks like almost like a weird L, like a triangle, kind of almost like a weird triangle. Right here is kind of like also maybe another little triangle, but it's more like a car seat. Here is just these 2 ones right here. Honestly, I don't know what that looks like. It looks like, you know, like a little ball getting stabbed with a skewer. With a little stick, but that's what these 2 are, right next to each other. This one's pretty easy, and in real life, it looks something more like this, right? We have our finger numbers here. Looks more like this. So if we go on to the next slide right here, we're gonna see some more chords, or actually some more different types of chords, right? Not quite. So those are the 5 basic guitar chords, really 7 altogether. Now we're going to move on to another way of reading music. Tablature, sometimes called tabs. I call them tabs. You know, it's kind of almost similar to the chord diagram, but not really. It has its own special way of reading it, right? And kind of reading it is going to be more like a graph. So this way is really useful to learn scales. You want to do some solos. You're not going to learn chords really good this way. So don't use tablatures to learn chords. You can, but they just look weird. They're not going to look very the same. And I'll show you what I mean in the next slide. That you see the way we read tablature is kind of weird because the low E string is actually on the bottom. And that would make sense, right? But for when you're actually playing a guitar, you're going to be confused a little bit because you think of the bottom string right here as the actual bottom string of a guitar like this, right? But it's not. We're looking at the guitar actually upside down. And this may seem very more confusing than it actually is. Because it really isn't, right? Once you actually start playing the notes, just know that the low string means it's the low note, so it's going to be actually the top string on the guitar. The how they make the low E on the top is kind of weird, but it just makes sense, right? So another reason why you should memorize the name of the strings too, always, is because we have E, B, G, D, A, E, right? So each one of these lines represents a string.
The next one is
the next string. Oh yeah, the next slide. So we'll go to the next slide. Oh yes. So like I said, top string is the baby string, high E, bing, right? But you're looking at the guitar upside down, so don't let it confuse you. I know most of you guys will, but just think of it in reverse, right? Always memorize the name of your strings, right? Memorize that. First step. Second step, look at what's the string called right here. So when you're reading tablature and you're like way over here and you're already like on the next page, you might get confused, but just remember how the strings are. Just so memorize the name of the strings on the paper too. It's also important to do that. So memorize the name of the strings on guitar and then memorize where they are on the paper. I know, lots of work. I sound like your math teacher now, don't I? I told you this was going to be more like math, right? So, and now the numbers. The numbers just means the number of the fret. So if you see a number 1, you're going to go the first fret. Boom, right there. First fret. Second, number 2. It's going to be the second fret like that. And then so on and so on. All the way up to 10, right? Because that's what we have here, 10. Now, when we did that, we're only working that low E string. But sometimes you're going to see some numbers that go all over the place. And that's just going to mean, so we're going to be, for example, so say, for example, we do 1 here, and then the 2 is going to be on the A. It's going to be kind of weird, right? But, yeah, that's the basics of how tablatures actually work. Like I said, you're not going to learn chords reading the tablature. You're going to learn specific scales and specific things, right, that you couldn't learn on the chords or the chord diagram. So yeah, we talked about the tablature just a little bit. I want you guys to focus more on the chords, reading the chord diagram. If you read a lot of chord diagrams, you'll be able to play the tablatures. Pretty much it's the same thing, almost, but it's just a little bit different. Yeah, we will learn how to use the diagrams to actually play music, because to play music, we talk about how to read the chords, right? But now we just need to actually string the chords together, and so we can make a complete song, right? So chords. So you can learn how to play beautiful chords like that. And when it comes to learning the solo of the song, right, you want to use tablatures, right? Well, you know, there you go. That's it. Hope you guys learned a lot.